Hi there. Welcome back to another episode of Key Conversations, the podcast where we talk about all the things to inspire you to have a fruitful and productive creative career. This season, we are talking all about how to release a record the right way, touching on a ton of different awesome resources. Today, we have the founder of Submithub, Jason Grishkoff, who is on this call from South Africa. Thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Other side of the world, huh?
Totally other side of the world from New York. Absolutely. But we are all in a lockdown of some sort. So this is, this is great, timely stuff to do because your whole platform is all about connecting with other people that work online, bloggers, playlisters, right? Like who do we get to connect to? Give us the nutshell version of what you've created with Submithub for musicians.
The way I like to position Submithub as a platform is it's a really convenient tool for connecting with music curators. And these could be music bloggers, which I myself am one of. It could be a Spotify playlister, a radio host, a YouTube channel, SoundCloud reposter, and actually we're doing Instagram influencers now, which sort of bleeds over into TikTok as well. So ultimately, Submithub is a really efficient way for communicating with those people. Historically, you would shoot out 500 emails, check out my song, and no one would respond to you. And now there's sort of some guarantee there. And the main premise is you're dangling a carrot in front of each of these curators' mouths, basically saying, here's a premium credit if you respond to me quickly and with a decision. So we don't offer guaranteed success. In fact, quite the contrary. I can almost guarantee everyone will suffer a lot of rejection. But what you're looking for as an artist is the ability to find your niche and open those communication channels with those curators and know that they actually listened. They actually gave you a shot. So that's kind of what we do.
Yeah. So I personally use Submithub, used it for my most recent record, Luminary, which happens to be in the new age category, which I know is a sort of smaller, less competitive field. And I, by accident, bought a double set of credits because the way it works is you buy a credit and basically you could submit for to each anything for $1, $2. I think I've seen $3 is the max.
Yeah, it's 1, 2, or 3 credits each. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I, by accident, bought 200 credits when I meant to buy 100. And then I was like, oh, well, I'll just keep them. And I actually couldn't find enough places to use all my credits. I have 91 left after combing through literally every source that does this kind of music. And I think I pitched to literally all of them. The cool thing was that before my album even came out, I had guaranteed 8 spots on variety of playlists, some blog posts. So I was able to get press for a couple dollars. I did not have to spend thousands of dollars on PR. I immediately had some great quotes. A lot of those actually came out the day the week the record was released. So I had to wait for some of them, which is fine. But I was also pitching these people like 2 months before my record was out. And some of them got back to me. They're like, cool, little too early. So that was good information for me, was to say, oh, okay, these people are actually they're like, give me a week. And that was really good data for me because I didn't really know, being new to pitching to Spotify playlists, what the timing was. So I loved my experience. I had successes. I always paid a little bit more. You can pay the $2 or $3 in order to get feedback. That was so interesting for me.
Yeah, the premium credits. So that 1, 2, or 3 pricing, all 3 of those will get you the same guarantees. The prices are in a way set by the curators themselves. So they can request a higher price. What they have to do is then message me and give a justification for it. Sometimes it's that they are overwhelmed by the amount of submissions they're getting. And so, I mean, it's a supply and demand thing. Increase the price, then they get fewer submissions. Other times, with some of the larger channels, they just feel like they're worth more money. And often it makes sense. I mean, if it's a YouTube channel with 3 million followers and they want to charge 3 credits, sure, seems justifiable.
Cool. Got it. Thank you for clarifying that. I think I messed that up, but that's right. So you can choose to get feedback. Some places don't like to give feedback, right? So that's if you're searching for, if I was searching for my new age Spotify playlisters, and some people that just don't want to give feedback, they may not show up in my search if I'm looking specifically for feedback. Is that correct?
Correct. Well, so what will happen with the premium credits is that they are asked to do 3 things. One is respond within 48 hours. 2, listen for at least 20 seconds, which to some artists doesn't seem like enough time, but I think for anyone who's listened to a lot of songs, you know in the first 20 seconds if you want to hear more. And the third one is the feedback, 10 words of original feedback. And the intent there is to demonstrate that they listen to your song and also give some clarity as to why it wasn't a good fit. And it's sometimes a controversial part of Submithub because you'll have one person tell you they love your vocals and the next person tells you they hate their vocals, and you're left kind of wondering who's telling the truth. And I guess the fact of the matter is they both are, because music's subjective and no two people hear it the same way. And I think that's what makes Submithub authentic in a way, is that crazy variation in the quality of feedback you get. Some people will write you a paragraph and others will write you 10 words of generic stuff that just leaves you going, is this for the right song?
Yeah.
So
I found
yeah.
the feedback really, really helpful for me, especially having never done anything in the new age category before. I listened to a lot of different playlists and sort of thought I knew which song of mine would fit the best. And then the first round, I decided not to use all my credits at one time. I wanted to collect data. And for me, when I say I'm collecting data, that takes a lot of the emotion out of rejection. It's just new information for me. So that's sort of my mindset around, okay, I'm going to submit 20 things. And if I get 20 rejections, I'm going to know. And I made sure that for each one I checked, like, yes, I need feedback, because it's an option. Sometimes you don't want the feedback. You don't care. So, but I was like, I want
Always
feedback.
encourage you to choose the feedback option. It has
Yeah. So
almost a double percentage approval rate, actually.
Interesting.
Because it forces the curators to think about it. And the other option that you're describing is one where you can say, no feedback, but they have to listen for 90 seconds. And what actually happens with that is that as a curator, you're often responding in real time. So you hit play on the song and you open up the box to start typing your thoughts in real time. And often you'll get halfway through that and you'll actually go, okay, well, I like this song, and you switch it to be approved. If it's a 90-second submission and you start typing, you hit that button to open the prompt and nothing shows up. It says you have to listen for 90 seconds. And so people will go and open up another tab, check Reddit, go on Twitter, browse Instagram, and they're forced to do something else. And then they become distracted and they're not paying attention to your song. So the feedback option is always the best one to choose, because it forces curators to engage with your content. And then you just have to sort of toughen up a little bit. And as you point out, if you think about it as a data collection exercise, it softens the blow a little bit.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what I learned in the first 10 or 20 that I submitted was, I thought I was sending like the most mellow track for these ambient sleep playlists and things like that. And most of the comments I got were like, we're looking for something more melodic. And I thought that was interesting. I was like, oh, melodies normally take me out of sleep and my ear gets caught onto them. But I definitely had a more melodic song. So I was like, oh, that's good to know. I'm pitching the wrong song. So I actually went back to all of those people and I pitched the second one. And I think about 50% of them ended up accepting that second submission. So
must have been a much better one. Yeah.
So I ended up using initial feedback to just tweak how I move forward. And then I was able to take that second song, go pitch to other people. And yeah, someone was like, this is too melodic, it's too distracting. So I went back and pitched them my original song. They liked that one. So like, I definitely was able to cater to people's requests, and I had no problem. I ended up submitting. There was one person that accepted, I think, my fourth song that I submitted to them, because their feedback was like, I like the sound of this. It's just not fitting quite yet. I need a little more. Like, it was very specific with the comments, and I was like, I think this is gonna work, and it finally did. So the feedback was super valuable, and it became a little bit of a game. A numbers game for me. And it was like, the more feedback you get, the more you can say, okay, one person didn't like the lack of melody, but everyone else wanted melody. And so I could really cater my pitches to what they were asking for. And I thought that was really, really cool. And it's so like the turnaround in 2 days, like you just set it for 2 days, like pitch 10 people, and then you find out all this information in 2 days, and then you can, recalibrate. And I think it's great.
It's much quicker than a publicist. And I think your approach is actually a really clever one. Oftentimes people jump into the deep end and they'll buy their 200 credits and send them all out in one go. And I think the idea you suggest of just put your toe in the water and see what it's like is great, because it gives you so much more information, and your subsequent attempts at sending are just way more informed.
Yeah. So for anyone that's listening and like wants to check this out, you can go to inthekey.co/submithub. That's a short link to get you there, and you get referred by me, which is so special. And you can check this out as we're going to keep talking. So what I want to sort of focus in on for a little bit here is when you don't have the record or your music released yet, what's the best way to take advantage of Submithub? And then let's flip it. So once your music is released, or if you have old music that you haven't done anything with, how can you utilize Submithub there? So let's split that up into you haven't released it yet. What's the best way? As I learned, 2 months out is a little too early for most of the people.
Mm-hmm.
But other than that, I was wondering what tips you had for an artist that's thinking, okay, I want to hit the ground running when this thing releases.
Okay, so let's start with the pre-release. And I think in consideration of this, it's important to look at the different types of curators on Submithub and the way they behave. So pre-release, you would typically go to music bloggers. These are guys who spend a little bit of time with your song and they write content about it. Music blogs used to be hugely influential and are much less so these days. There's a specific subset of them that still wield quite a lot of power, which are the Hype Machine listed blogs. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Hype Machine, but it's an aggregator website that sort of keeps track of what a subset of music blogs are writing about. And that Hype Machine platform is monitored by a lot of big editorial teams. So Spotify's team, Apple, etc. So blogs can still be quite influential, even though they've lost their day-to-day listeners. Another reason you might want to go to blogs is for something you mentioned earlier, which are press clips. So they're going to say stuff about your song, and this can be quite helpful in promo materials that you push out. So if you've got an Instagram ad you want to run and you want to have a couple quotes on there with an attribution to the blog, it kind of adds some legitimacy to it, and it shows that other people are excited about it. And the last one with pre-release, again with blogs, is that you can offer something called a premiere, which sometimes helps increase your chances of being approved. And what a premiere is you approach a blog and you effectively say, I've got a new song coming out on April 1st. I'd love you guys to be the first one to announce it to the world. And what happens is that they'll run the blog coverage and you'll push everyone to their website, and both parties end up happy because you got some coverage and you sort of sweetened the pot to help get it there. And they're happy because you're sending people to their website. So pre-release, I think it's definitely good to try and drum up some of this blog coverage, get the quotes going so you can line up your ducks. Most of them aren't going to actually have their article written until your song comes out, but at least you know you've got that content that you can share once it does come out.
Yeah, that's great. I also used and I don't know if this is sneaky or not, but I used some of the feedback I got. Like one person was like, hey, this is actually like, I think they were like not even running the playlist. They changed the playlist, but they're like, I really love it. And gave this really beautiful, like 3-sentence review of my song, even though they weren't using it. In just the feedback, I was able to take that quote from that person and use that as a, little thing on my website.
You can, yeah. Yep. Another clever idea that I have seen people use. And what's cool there is sometimes you can actually send a little tweet to whoever gave you that feedback and say, hey, thanks, I really appreciate it. I hope you don't mind if I use this as a quote.
Yeah.
And maybe they'll actually retweet you or get excited about it or double take and be like, wait, which one was this? I've written 100 feedbacks in the last week. Let me go revisit that. So
yeah,
it's a good strategy to try and re-engage. I mean, you got to remember that the people on the other side are still people. And Submithub is where they've centralized their process, but they're still approachable on social media, and they're way more receptive to it if you're not trying to pitch a song to them. So if you're tooting their horn and saying, hey, I love what you wrote, they're going to be like, oh, that's great. Yeah. Oh, cool.
Yeah, totally.
So that's what I would do pre-release. Spotify playlisters are definitely a hot topic these days. And I think a lot of it is trying to trip the algorithm into putting your song into more of Spotify's automatic playlists. With Spotify playlisters, gosh, I don't want to talk them down, but it's a lot less effort for a playlister to share a song, and they often share a much higher volume than the blogs would. So with a blogger, they actually have to get involved, write an article, publish it. With a playlister, they find a song they like, they almost always want to add it straight away. And so with pre-release, I tend to recommend skipping the Spotify playlisters and just waiting until release day when you actually have the link for Spotify. because then you can submit to them. And a lot of those guys like to approve and share straight away. Approve,
Cool.
share. It's done. Lining up pre-release coverage with Spotify playlists is definitely doable on Submithub, and you might have done that as well.
Yeah, I did. I
And what's
had
cool about the
more there.
platform is it filters people out based on your release date. So if you say my song's coming out April 1st, and a Spotify playlister says, well, hold on, I don't want pre-release songs. I only want stuff that's ready. They can just change that setting on their side, and they're not going to show up for you to submit to.
Oh, so my
Yeah,
searches right now for new age Spotify playlists are going to be my results are going to be very different than when I was doing the pre-release, because they saw that my date was not
absolutely. Yeah.
not ready for them. So I should totally go back and use those 91 credits that I have now that
Yeah.
yeah,
And I should do a better job re-engaging people and letting them know that. I mean, it's there. It's something I think about. But at the end of the day, the list you see in one given time is going to be different if you go back a week later. And that's just because it's using the filters you've selected to predetermine who should be shown to you.
got it. That's really great. Well, we'll just share this podcast everywhere and then everyone will know.
That's right. Yeah.
There we go. Getting all the information out. So that's great. Okay. So that's the first thing to know is like, once your music is released, you might have a whole new body of people to pitch to just because they only want to be pitched music that is out there. So that seems like Spotify playlisters are a little bit higher on that list, which is
Yep. I would
really
say so.
cool. You can't obviously offer a premiere. That's not a thing you can do once the music is released. So that comes off
Nope.
the table. What about music that is like old, years old, 2, 3 year, whatever. Do people not care because it's new to them?
Again, this is actually where the filters come in. So there are quite a few blogs and playlisters who are quite opinionated about release dates. And if they get a song that's 2 years old, that's it. Heck, 2 weeks old might be too old. Myself, as one of the bloggers, I don't care how old it is. I mean, it could be from the 90s. If it sounds good, that's what matters. I'm going to share it. So when you put in your release date as you're uploading your song, if you indicate that it was from 2 years ago, it's going to automatically filter out anyone for whom that's a problem. You might still bump into the occasional person who goes, man, really 2 years? You're pushing it. But it's rare because, again, the filters are doing their job there for you.
Cool. Very cool. Let's talk about genres. I mean, I mentioned that I had
Ooh, tough one,
somewhat
yeah.
of a quote easy time. My success rate percentage was higher than some friends I had compared with who were in more of like the singer songwriter, or I think there was one rapper or country or something. So I'm wondering, like, what do you have any data or sort of feelings around competition and what to do if you're in a not competitive or overly saturated genre?
So the first thing is actually about a week ago, I just pulled together some data, which is available on submithub.com/friendly-genres. So friendly genres with a little hyphen in it. And it has a list of all the genres on Submithub sorted according to which ones are the friendliest. And neoclassical has something like a 24% approval rate. And
That's what
I wonder if it's this.
yeah.
Yeah. And then to your point, as you scroll down the list, you start looking, okay, well, site-wide, there's an average 10%. Who's below the 10%? And that's where you'll start to get into the more saturated genres, rap, singer-songwriter, etc. And you're seeing this because while there are more curators in that genre, they're also overwhelmed for choice. And just because there's so much more choice doesn't mean they're going to choose more. It actually means they're going to become even more selective. So with something like jazz or neoclassical, you see a higher approval rate because you're competing against fewer people. And once you start to dig into that rap, folk, singer-songwriter, indie rock, these really saturated genres, your odds of being approved start to diminish quite quickly. So what do you do? How do you optimize for that? And first thing is trying to figure out what your genre is, and that's not an easy one. I think a lot of people struggle with this, but I'll tell you the way it works on Submithub. You can choose up to 3 genres. Currently, we've got about 140 subgenres on there. And when you do choose these genres, it creates an or statement. So it says, show me all the curators who like genre 1 or genre 2 or genre 3. And then based on the genres you've chosen, it generates a genre match score for each curator. And that takes into account other factors like how often they approve those genres. Do they like all 3 of the genres you've chosen or just one of them? Those types of things. And it's really fancy cool code that I wrote, but it works really well. So the top thing you should do when you've chosen your genre is sort by genre match. You'll see that at the top of the list. There's even a little recommendation that says, hey, we recommend you sort by genre match. And once you do that, you'll see at the top of the list, the curators who show up tend to really like the genres you've chosen. And those are the people you want to focus on. So you can then from there go look at their recently shared songs, which is on the right of each blog, and you can actually listen to them in line. There's play buttons right there. Click play, listen to what they're sharing, go, oh, yeah, this doesn't sound like me. And then the next one, you go, okay, this
So
does sound like me.
I love that feature so much. Like that, you don't need to go outside this web page. You don't need to go open Spotify. You don't need to search for things. You don't need to. It's very brilliant. I love that.
Yeah, it's
Carry on.
right there for
Sorry.
you to see. And I mean, that just gets to the ethos of everything I've tried to build here is transparency. I can't help if some of these guys suck and some of them are incredible. But what I can show you is all the data that might drive whether they do suck or not. So what's nice about Submithub is that you're just, well, I mean, in a way, you're overwhelmed with data when you look at each outlet. It's got, this is how often they approve songs. This is how long they take to share. This is what their feedback looks like. Here you can see a sample of the most recent feedback. Here's where they typically share. Here's how many plays they typically get. All sorts of stuff is just kind of coming at you. And um, it does take work, as you pointed out. I mean, you did a research phase essentially, and Submithub is involved. You have to spend some time thinking about who you want to send to. So I guess the one upside of a publicist is they just do it for you, but you're looking at it's 100 times the cost.
Yeah,
So,
and tons of time. One of the things that I'm sort of a geek on, well, my shtick is communication, just being really clear on what you want and then powerfully communicating that. So for me, that looks like I dork out in email marketing for musicians, like how to deal with your fan list in a really effective way. And then also pitching, which I did a ton of experiments when I was touring, and for any given tour, I was sending 100 emails to venues, to radio stations. And I was like, oh, let me test this out. Let me write a pitch one way, send it to 50 of those emails, and then write a pitch a second way, send it to 50 and see which ones worked. And then I learned follow up. And then I sort of created an 8-step thing that I follow now, like to a T. And it's a little mini course called The Perfect Pitch. But I
yeah.
noticed that, you don't need to write a ton of stuff to these people. So I feel like, if you're saying the first part, which is like my step one for the perfect pitch is do your research. So you're pitching to the right person. That's going to increase your chances of getting a yes a ton, to make sure that you're
tremendously, yeah.
And then the second thing is, what's the win for them? What's the win for you? And it's so hard when you're like, I just want to be on someone's playlist. I just want them to hook me up. It's hard to imagine how is it a win-win. And we just need to remember that we've got the content. Without us as a whole, like these people, the bloggers and the playlisters, they don't have anything. So they're hoping that they love our song. Like, I think, I've done some experiments with big groups where, everyone pitches something to someone else, and the instinct for people, even if it was just a crazy, like, hey, would you give me $10,000 for my record? The instinct is to say yes. Like, people want to say yes inherently. And then there's the no comes from a number of factors that might be stopping them. So if you can just remove those number of factors, like if you're pitching death metal when you are actually like smooth jazz, like they're going to want to say yes inherently, like on a subconscious level. And the first block is going to be like, you're the wrong genre.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah.
maybe it's not melodic enough, or, then there will be some steps. So the thing that I love about Submithub is that you don't need to do all these paragraphs and everything. You're like a couple of the earlier steps in the perfect pitches to get related. They're already ready and open and related, like cool, your musician. Like you can skip so much stuff. So then it's really just like, what makes this different? What makes it a win for you? Like I found that the ones that said yes were like seemed really psyched that I was going to share it to my 13,000 followers on my page and my email list of 10,000, so sharing numbers, if you have numbers in your favor, I think numbers are always a great thing.
It can help, yeah.
But I was going to ask you, what are some tips and tricks that you have? Because you get a little like, hey, is there anything you want to say? And you have a character limit. I think it's like 2 or 3 sentences. Anything you want to say to the person you're pitching to? Do you have any suggestions there that people have gravitated to or you've gotten feedback from?
So that's the quick pitch you're describing, which is the very last step of submitting. I kind of ask you, like, what's your quick pitch? And that gets to really the emphasis of Submithub, which is entirely the music. So everything else you provide is supplemental information that can be dived into if the curator likes your song. But the entire decision tends to be weighted on whether it sounds good to them or not. So the interface for the bloggers is very much so just, song, 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 song with some information, including your quick pitch. But I don't actually show them how many followers you have. Even though you've added that data to your artist profile, it's not visible to them. I don't show them who else has approved your song or how successful you've been or anything like that. All of the emphasis is simply placed on the merit of the song. And so I suppose that's counted as some of the points you were making, where you are crafting a story and trying to relate to them. But that part's still important because first you got to like the song. After that, a lot of these guys want to find something a little bit more interesting as well. So they'll open up your profile, read your bio, go, oh, wow, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I could totally write a blog post about this. And they'll go from there. So it's important to share that information with them as well. But Submithub has made it a little bit less about the story and more about the music.
Cool.
And that's got some pros and some cons. But one thing it's done very well is level the playing field for independent artists. So I think prior to Submithub's existence, you had to hire a publicist if you really wanted to break out, or you can do what you did, which is, you're on tour and you're spending hundreds of hours meticulously going through this list, trying to find the perfect people. You're basically doing a publicist's job, right? So you are your own publicist. And historically, one of the only ways to succeed was to have that. And most independent artists didn't have that. They were working on their songs and they didn't have the time to invest or the know-how to do that. And so major label artists were kind of running the show. And what's happened with Submithub is it's, as I said, leveled the playing field. When I get a song, it's entirely based on the merit of that music. And I actually don't care how big they are, if everyone else has been covering them, if no one else has been covering them. It becomes way less important. It's just about my connection to the song and whether it sounds good. So yeah, that's kind of what it's like from my perspective as a blogger.
I love all that. This is super helpful. I think Submithub is takes a lot of pressure off of that PR element. I think, PR serves a purpose, and I'm a big fan of working with like really good PR people, which are, they're few and far between, but this is just a really great way to get some feedback early on. I'm excited to go back in now that my record's been released a month now, and share that, hey, it was number one on Amazon and iTunes in the new age category. Like, that's going to be my new pitch, is like, I have some evidence that people like this.
Yeah.
So, trying to throw that in at first glance too.
Cool. The other feature, just maybe you can dip your toes into, is the hot or not feature. I don't know if you've played around with that, but that's getting other artists to rate your songs.
The hot or not feature?
Yeah. It's linked in the main menu. But it's a simple thumb up, thumb down system. Your song goes in front of other artists. So if you rate 10 songs, then you get to put your song up to be rated. So it's pretty straightforward, but it's a good chance to expose yourself to some of the other music that artists are creating, possibly generate new fans. And if you're using SoundCloud as your main streaming source, all of the plays will get counted as well. So it's kind of a way to drive up plays.
That's very cool. I love that. I was going to ask you, if we did like a laser round of what are some tips, tricks, anything that we haven't said yet, insider from the founder that you could share with us?
Okay, cool. Let me just see how quickly my brain can work here. The first one we touched on, sort by genre match. Always sort by genre match. It's definitely the most important thing, because sometimes you'll filter by genre and you'll see some blogs on there who just don't seem aligned. And the reason is probably because you're not sorting by genre match.
Genre the second match. One, got it.
Yeah. If you're going to target a blog, under the additional filters is a blog filter called RGB, really good bloggers. And as the name implies, those are the people that we think are really good bloggers. So to qualify for that program, they have to approve 9 out of 10 of their songs as a blog post. So what we found when we first launched Submithub was that a lot of blogs would say, cool, I like this song, but not enough, so here's a tweet. And people would go, well, but I sent to you because you're a blog. I didn't want a tweet. I wanted a blog post. So the RGB program identifies the blogs who actually write blog posts and tend to approve for that format the majority of the time.
Got it.
So that's a good one to target on there. If you're looking at Spotify playlisters, many of them have multiple playlists that they share to. And it's good to set your expectations around where they typically share to. So we provide all of that data. As you scroll through them in the list, you'll actually see a breakdown of which playlists they share to, how often they share, and how many plays they generate from it. So that's something to keep an eye on with the Spotify playlisters, because the number of followers they have doesn't actually necessarily mean it translates to plays. So you're kind of looking for that. Another cool one we launched was Instagram influencers. There's close to 100 of them now on Submithub, and which is pretty good. I think we're adding at this point 3 or 4 a day. They do share their content in stories, and if you've used Instagram in the States, you probably have access to a music sticker that you can add to your stories. And what's nifty is that those are monetized. So if someone plays the story and the song automatically starts playing, which I believe it does, then hypothetically, you're supposed to get paid royalties by Facebook. And your distributor should take care of paying you and making sure that it actually gets put onto Instagram and Facebook's system. So Instagram influencers are an interesting way of exposing your music to a larger audience and possibly getting some of that money back.
Very awesome.
Yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, this has been really, really great. So if people are interested in you, where can they find out more about you or connect with you online?
Okay, well, I'm super easy to connect with. You can shoot me an email at jason@submithub.com, or you can just go into the Submithub chat rooms, which are on the website, and have a conversation with me. If you want to find out more about me, just Google Jason Grishkov.
There you go. All right.
There's some articles and some videos, but people can chat to me. And if someone shoots me an email at jason@submithub.com and they mention this podcast, I'll give them some free premium credits as well.
Super awesome. Thank you so much for your time today and for sharing all this stuff. I'm really excited to dive back in, Jason. So this is great.
Good.